Talked a little about durability, functionality, and beauty. I've talked a little about space, light, materials, and sound. You have talked a little about all these things. What has an effect, what do we need in order to make architecture, what defines good architecture, and where do we experience architecture. I'm going to try to combine all of these things and show you some illustrations of architecture. I'm just going to give you some very different examples, most of them in Denmark. Have any of you been to the old town in Aarhus? Some of you. Okay, it's worth a visit, especially when it turns really spring. Well, this is how Denmark looked like in the medieval, from 1500 to the 1900s. And surely, also in Horsens, you can still see some of these things in the landscape and in this old town. Of course, this was arranged like this because of the materials they had and the materials they used. It was a module they repeated of wood, and they filled it out with clay and bricks and mud and straw and whatever they had. And all these houses got different colors for different expressions, different sizes, different places. Old town villages had a well in the middle, probably the same as in your home countries. A lot of general ideas would be the same. A lot of small shops and functions in the lowest part of the house, right out next to the streets. The mill, close to the city center. And, well, those ways of arranging the old town, medieval town, were, of course, very natural way of doing it, because of functions and because of the way life was back then. Logic way of placing things. Some of our villages still look like this in Denmark. This is Bogense in Fyn. Do you know where Fyn is? This is a picture from today. It's a beautiful town. It's a small town. Let's see if this works now. Probably doesn't. Google Earth. I'm supposed to find Denmark right now. It's slow right now, isn't it? Now we are somewhere around here. This is Fyn, an island, and Bogense, the pictures I just showed you, is a little town up here. We're just going to zoom in on it now, just for you to see a normal Danish village. Next to the sea, very usual for Denmark. Also has a big effect on the architecture and the way our towns are arranged. Close to the water, the harbor, waterfront. Have to have some pretty stable buildings in order to last from this heavy weather, heavy rain, heavy wind, heavy snow. Now let's take just a random look at this. Okay, that was not so old-fashioned. Normal street in Denmark. quiet, calm. You can take a look out the window as well. You can see another neighborhood down here, an area. You see that every time you go out and smoke. Typical Danish neighborhood. Well, that's the way we live. That's the way we built. And again, you can still see the old traditional way of building in the landscape. It's still there. It's still showing some history of what we used to build with. That's a matter of materials. That's a matter of the function, matter of the place we live. Those things are still visible in the town. I have to do this every time. I don't know how to go back to the slide. Here, architecture today in the Danish village. Now this is a matter of bringing people together in a town. This is a matter of having space for the life we live in a town. A matter of having your own individual house for a family. That's what decides the size. The materials we use are the same as we've used for centuries. Now, something happened 50 years ago. We started building family houses in a different way. And it's a very big jump to show you the medieval village, the old town from Aarhus, and to this. This is a very modern way of thinking. But that's a new way of thinking houses suddenly. Knudsen, one of our famous Danish architects, made this in the 70s on the Sjælland. And his new ideas were to spread out the houses. This is a plan, site plan, of a lot of different houses called Kingehusene, one of the very most respected houses in Denmark, single family houses. He wanted to give the houses more light, more space. He wanted to give them some kind of, create an area, some kind of relationship to this house. He wanted to build a house that fitted into the landscape and created these structures so that when going through here, now those codes show that there's a difference in level every time you have a line, right? So you can see that the landscape is going up and down. Here. There's a lake here. It's suddenly interesting to go inside a typical area for houses. These are modern thoughts to bring into traditional buildings. You want to make an experience when walking around in the neighborhood.
Do you have an idea, like, they're all basically of that size, like how many square meters is it? Are they quite big, like over 150 living space, or is there a scale?
There will probably be around 130, 150, I think.
Still relatively.
Yeah. And what he did was also, that was the way of arranging them. That was a new and modern idea. But he also made a pretty modern way.
100 square meters.
They are just only 100.
Yeah, according to this.
Okay. He made a courtyard where everything inside was facing the courtyard. A lot of light into the courtyard. And you can see how these courtyards have been placed, not randomly, definitely not randomly, but planned. Here you can see how they all have the courtyards next to the, more or less next to the lake, or maybe to consider the light and the sun from the south and the west in the courtyard, because you want to be able to sit in the sunshine in your courtyard. So all of this design inside the house is related to the courtyard, which is related to how it's planned in this system. Here's some of the pictures. Very modern way of thinking a house, right? New bricks, new materials, new way of arranging them, new windows, new heights, chimneys. In the landscape, a lot of similar ones, They're just the same, they're just placed differently, creating this landscape of houses. And you can also see how they're opening up, inviting the light in, and you can see some long views inside the house. Modern ideas incorporated again. This is the start of what we in Danish call row houses. Now this is a very modern house. This is from 2006, I think. It's in Copenhagen. Have you seen it? No, it's a dormitory. Students live here. This is one of the finest examples of Danish architecture today. Now what you see here is that what was actually also present here is the social aspect of how people want to be together. They want to have spaces between their houses. And that was the main idea of this whole dormitory. They wanted to connect people in a circle. This is inspired from a Chinese tribe called the Haki tribe. Nevertheless, each of those squares, which more or less look like the shape of a container, they are not, but just in order to explain what it is of course a different room with all students living inside.
A normal student, would they just get one box for a one-room apartment?
Yeah, no, I think it's not one. Well, one that sticks out like this. Yeah. I think so, yes, or maybe two. And some of them are combined. I can't quite see the screen from my position, but some of them are combined. I believe you can see that.
Go on the net and see what
and then one of the important things when doing this is making sure where to enter. And they have 5 of these entrance areas here. And what you see here is it's a new way of living. It's a new way of arranging houses. It all looks alike. It all looks like the same kind of box, but still they are all individually sticking in or out in this whole structure. And they all have a different view, so none of them are totally alike. And inside the circle, you can see how they're moving back and forth, creating different terrace and balcony areas for the people to sit inside the circle and actually have a talk with the neighbor on the other side, also facing the circle. Down here we have a circle meeting point and some trees. And you can really see how the life is created inside here. Now there's a lot of other things I would like to describe into this. I'm not going to spend the time on it today. But it's just a fine example of a very modern way of thinking, living as well. Now here you can see, this is in Sweden. And this has a totally different function. This is a visitor center. And this is in the middle of the nature. It is to present the nature. And what you have to realize is when making architecture, you want to express something. You want to make this building express what it is there for. When looking at this one, it expresses a lot of life. Express a lot of different people combined, having a social life. When you look at this one, it certainly does not express this. It expresses something more calm, something more clear, something more natural maybe because of this material chosen. It's very elegantly placed in the middle of the nature. It's actually not taking a lot of attention. It's pretty calm and quiet, this building in here. Imagine a big wood or a big national park around it. It wouldn't take much space there. Now it's also about making those dimensions comply with the rest of the building. It's also about lifting it up, making it look like it's not totally situated in the ground, but maybe it's not floating or anything, but it doesn't look so heavy. And that's one way of doing this, lifting it up from the ground. I don't know if you can actually see through here. I don't think so, but it looks like it, more or less. It's also about making it very transparent. This is the entrance. And you can see all the wood in the background. It doesn't take a lot of attention. It's built in the neighborhood. It's about expressing nature and being built into the nature. This is the totally opposite. Not taking the wood. This is from Japan. They're always the crazy ones. Putting in concrete in the middle of the woods. But you can also do that, as long as you're aware of what you're doing. I think this is a family house more than a visitor center. But sometimes you just hit a nerve and it works. Now, not all concrete houses, not all white shapes would fit that well into the woods like this one does. I think they've actually achieved something here. Do you know this one? Yeah, it's down the center, right? Yeah. You live there? Okay. I think you need a warm bed if you need to live in there. This has a totally different function. It is there to. This is, by the way, this is the oldest building in Horsens. It is there to express the power of the king. It is there to express the power of God. It has a totally different functionality. It needs a tower for the bell. Needs an entrance for the public. It needs to brag a little. It needs to show off, right? That's what the churches do. That's also why they are like this inside. They want to dominate the people. They want the people to bow, right? At least that's what they did back then. This is a new one. Have you seen this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's here in Horsens as well. Yeah. If you go down to the stream and go out to, I don't know what it's called. It's close to Quickly, if you know that town.
The good thing about that design is no bells.
No bells. Oh, it does have bells.
Oh, but they're very quiet.
It was made by a guy who was very inspired by the Finnish architect called Alvar Aalto. I don't know if you've known him. He's made some very famous vases and churches as well. But this is a modern design, a modern interpretation of a church as well. Considering a modern way of using materials, modern colors, a modern way of getting the light inside. We don't have to use those old-fashioned types anymore. You would never see a new church being built like the ones you had back in the 1200. That would be what we call eclecticism, to try to be something that we are not. We are not in the middle of the 1200th century. We are in the 2000s. So we built in a new way, and we have different approaches to building. And for each of those pictures, you can see how these things have an effect and have some way of changing architecture, changing the way we live, changing the way we think about the way we live, changing the way we experience a church. You probably don't know this one. It's also a church, and it's also by Knudsen. And looks very modest. As I said, it's very modern. It's not there to brag, not in the same way as the one here in Horsens is, or anywhere else. But when you go inside, it definitely does brag. It's art when you go inside. These are the hallways. The dark ones are the ones combining the whole thing. This is the church room itself, and all these other things are for other functions. And this is a section through it where there are towers You can maybe recognize it from this one. And there's a big part in the middle, and that's of course the choir itself. Here, walking down one of the hallways, you see how this is all made of concrete elements, wooden floors, wooden furniture, concrete beams, and you lift your look. It's the same hallway, you just look a little up, and it's got light coming in. It's a beautiful room to be in. Then you go into the church room itself, and you suddenly realize that what you thought was so squared and so straight lines is totally gone in the church room itself. This is the roof structure. It looks like the sky. It looks like the heaven. These shapes are so much like clouds or skies or whatever. It's so poetic to be in there. It's got a lot of room, a lot of light. The light is coming in from here. It moves up here and goes back here where it's dark, and the darkness here. Creating these waves in the ceiling.
Yes. The big church like that, what kind of price ticket? Like 50 million, 20 million?
I have no clue. I don't know about the price. But what you also see in here is how the materials have been thought of. This is concrete. This is heavy concrete. And it looks so light and elegant. And these furnitures here are made of wood. Also very elegant and very calm in a quiet room. These are tiles. And these are very modern interpretation of the altar inside a church. So what I'm saying here is that for each different building, you need to make different decisions. You need to make different approaches to a building. What is it there for? What does it need to express? What is the history behind it? Where is it placed? What kind of experience do I want to have? What defines this place? Actually, all these things. And where do we experience architecture? Well, that can more or less be everywhere. But sometimes architecture is not planned. Sometimes you can go out and find a part of an old town or a new town where it's not been planned, or at least it's been planned bad. So you don't like being there. That's not good architecture. Good architecture would, for me, be somewhere that has durability, functionality, and beauty incorporated. So it's something that you think looks nice, it's something that works when using it, it's something that lasts long, and it's something that you like being in, and something that works. Now, if these things aren't present, you definitely know it. And that's this opera house from your Knudsen as well. You probably know that one. I'm not going. That was just my end slide. So that was just a little quick introduction to architecture and the thoughts behind it. Okay, thank you for today.